And I'm Mark McCatty, so I'm glad that you're with me. I wanted to remind you to follow me on LinkedIn. I do have contacts there, and I put out information on leadership and teams that I think would be valuable for you. So I encourage you to follow me there. So the first concept is just talking about leadership. Leading, and leading is basically influencing others. So there's the old saying that says, if you're leading and no one is following you, then you're kidding yourself taking a walk. And so that says that if you're not in a position of leadership, and in such a way that people are following you, that you're really not leading. And so the ability to be effective at leadership is the ability to be effective at influencing. So a lot of the conversations that we'll have will be around how do we lead, but the bigger conversation is how do we influence others, whether we're talking about leading down or leading sideways or leading up. What we're talking about is how do we influence others by our way of reacting, connecting, dealing, coaching them, and whether or not we are effective at influencing, meaning creating change. So when we think about what does leadership look like in terms of results, well, leadership looks like that others are influenced by the leaders and that results that the leader gets because of that influence. So one of the things to look at when we think about how influential I am, or am I being followed, is the book. It's an older book, but it's a good book, The Measure of a Leader. And so that talks about the fact that when someone is leading and people are following, that there are observable characteristics that we find in the followers. And the first one is that the behaviors of the followers support the leader's goals. So the leader's got goals. They're working on goals. They're trying to accomplish things. And the followers then are using their discretionary effort above and beyond their skills, their motivation, to help to support those goals and help the leader to achieve success. And if we don't see that, then we have to really question whether or not we're leading or influencing that situation. The second characteristic of those followers is that they're willing to make sacrifices for the leader's cause. So that says that they're not volunteering to make those sacrifices necessarily, but they're willing to make them. And those sacrifices might be that they're learning to run a new piece of equipment, or they're participating on a team to develop new SOPs, or they're willing to work overtime, or come in on their day off, or delay their break, or they're willing to do a job that is needed because nobody else is available or qualified to do that. And in many cases, then they're willing to do that job and then help somebody else to learn that job, if it's one that they don't particularly like to do. But what we see then is that there's a sacrifice that's being made. And equally, if we're leading sideways or leading up, what we're seeing is that other people that we're leading or influencing is willing to make some sacrifices, willing to sacrifice the team, willing to sacrifice their own desires, willing to do something to help the person that is influencing them, or the leader in that case. Another characteristic that we see of the follower is that they encourage others to conform. And I like this one because it says that if they see someone else operating unsafely or producing bad quality product or slow walking, not working hard, that they'll talk to that individual. So it's not the leader that'll have to do that. They'll do that. And then the last one is that, well, they really manage themselves. They conduct themselves in ways the leader approves. And so, we all have good days, we all have bad days. But if the follower is having a bad day, they remember that others are counting on them, and they remember what the leader needs from them. And so they manage themselves, they manage others, they make sacrifices, and then they do their best. They bring that discretionary effort. And when we think about that, here's a model that's not in the book, but I think it's interesting when you think about it, how it works. It says Okay, so these followers, folks that are being influenced by the leader, are working towards goals. Every organization has goals. Your team has goals. And so think about the goals that you're working for on your team or your shift or your crew. And then they're in the areas of productivity and safety and quality and customer satisfaction and, of course, the dollars, profit, or managing a budget. And so we're working towards those goals, and there are only two environments that we're working in that will help us or hurt us towards accomplishing those goals. And one of those environments is the technical environment. That's the stuff. Equipment, materials, tools, supplies, and processes. That's the stuff. And we know that if there are problems in the technical environment, that it's going to have a negative impact on our goals. And that means that we're going to miss a productivity goal, or there's a potential for an accident or some damage, or quality is impacted. But we understand that, so we put a lot of effort on the technical environment to make sure that we have what we need, where we need, how we need. And so many times that isn't the reason why we fail a goal. The other environment is the social environment, and that's people. And that's interactions between people. That's listening and speaking, leading and following. That's dealing with problems or dealing with conflict. And if we have problems in the social environment, that social environment will impact your goals. So I challenge you to think about examples of where you've missed goals, examples of where as a plant or as a shift or as a crew, as a team, that you've missed the goals. And I would guess, I would wager that more often than not, the reason that the goal was missed was not because of a technical problem, but it was because something in the social environment where there was a lack of collaboration, a lack of problem solving, where there was more blaming than there was working together, or just the general attitudes and what that brings. So that says, okay, we need to understand that. And I think that's from a leadership perspective, from an influence perspective, that gives us some insight into where we need to be spending our time leading. And most probably is in that social environment, which is a very difficult, not difficult in terms of hard, but difficult in terms of uncomfortable to have the conversations in a social environment. The other thing that I think is important to think of in this model is what kind of skills are required then. And the skills obviously are technical skills. We, as leaders, we need to make sure that our folks have the technical skills required to operate that set of equipment, materials, tools, supplies, and processes, and make sure they have it, make sure they're doing it well. And the other skill set is social. So we want to make sure that we are aware of where people are lacking social skills, interacting badly with others, not using teamwork, not using initiative. And so because that social environment can cause so many problems for us, we want to be alert to where people are on that skill set and be working as a leader to build that up. The other skills set that we need is business skills. And a quick example of that is just the ability to make the right value judgments. And that's whether it's more important to be productive or be safe, whether it's more important to produce good quality product or whether it's to produce quantities, large quantities of product. And what we see there in situations, again, is that somebody thinks they're doing well, they're making a lot of product, they're putting a lot of effort in, they're spending a lot of time on the job, but what they're doing doesn't meet our production standards, it doesn't meet our quality standards, it's unsafe in terms of operation, and what you're seeing in that is a lack of business skills. So we want a team that is technically proficient, socially proficient, and business skills are proficient. That is, they're saying yes to the right things, they're putting the priority on the right items, and that's all leadership, to make sure that that is supported and understood. So when we look then at that engagement, we're saying, okay, we've got folks that are engaged and following, and they have the skill sets to be successful.